Hello, everyone. And the good news is this absolutely is not a panel. This is not a panel discussion. There will be no agreement. This is all about being disagreeable. So this afternoon, we have a debate for you, the great ESG debate. And the debate is, the next trillion will be green, but will it be digital economy and virtual, or will it be real economy and tangible? And so, to help us have this discussion, let me please invite onto the stage Max, Shaun, Leah, and Mel. Please give them a round of applause. Yay! Now, I am not going to say which organisations they represent because today we are doing an Oxford Union-style debate, kind of a little bit Singlish. So it's not the full Oxford Union-style debate, but we're using most of the principles of it. So they're not representing their organisations, they are representing their teams. And as you can see, we have the girls' team and we have the boys' team. At the end of this session, you, the audience, are going to be voting for which is the winning team. And the winning team gets all of our love and affection. There's no actual prize, just the honour of winning. Now, before I came to Singapore, I used to work for a very large food company. And when I went to events like this, they were food events. And you know the good thing about a food event? There's a lot of food. Every stall has a lot of food. You constantly eat. You start off your day with a breakfast meeting. Remember the one in Boston? Not just a little stale croissant, a full-on plate of food. Then you go around the stalls and get more food. Then you'd meet people for lunch and have more food. Then maybe you'd have another coffee meeting with some more food. Then you'd meet people for drinks. All of the stalls put out happy hour drinks from around 3 p.m. Then you went out for more drinks, and then you went out for dinner, and then you had more drinks, and then you repeated. You never ran out of food. It was a very tangible conference. And then I started coming to the Singapore FinTech Festival. Oh my God, what a change. I can remember Navin Suri, who runs the Founders Peak, said he loses 2 kilograms every time he comes to the Singapore FinTech Festival. He said that's because he walks so far. I think it's because there's a dearth of food here. Like, it's really hard to get good food at this place. But is that the future? Sustainable food? Is it how we get here? Is it on sustainable public transport? Is it the buildings that we're in? Or is the future what we've been talking about here this week? Is it digital currencies, central bank digital currencies? Is it living in virtual reality in the metaverse? Is it cryptocurrency? So what do you think? What is our future going to be? Is it the real and tangible, the sustainable beer you can hold in your hand? Or is it virtual? Is it a cryptocurrency? So backstage, we threw up a coin and tossed a digital currency in the air. Didn't come down, it's still up there in the ether, and decided who would go first. Boys' team are going to go first. So I will tell you, each speaker gets 10 minutes, and I'm going to time them. And when they're short of time, it'll be the timing police. We can all go whoop, whoop. It's the timeout. Then the next speaker. So speaker one, speaker one, speaker two, speaker two. Then it's you guys have a chance to participate. But it's not Q&A. It is points of clarification. So we have a lot of experts out here. If you have a point of clarification, if you think they've made a mistake, or you have further information to help one of the teams on their case, I want you to raise your hand and raise your point of clarification. But as I said, it's not a Q&A. It's you adding to the debate. Then we'll ask each team to summarize, and we'll come back to you, the audience, to judge the best debate team. So I've asked them to be as controversial as they like. They can go as far as they like. They just can't draw blood. So that's also what you can judge. Okay, are we ready? Yeah, come on, it's Friday. Okay, I have the big red buzzer. Shaun, would you like to stand at the podium? Or there? Okay, but I'm going to hit the buzzer. We'll see if it works. Okay, Shaun, your time starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed opponents and attentive audience, I would like you to put on your virtual reality headsets. Actually, that's not necessary. We just need a virtual reality mindset. Now, this is all about what we wish for. Our wishes as a global community are expressed in the Sustainable Development Goals. This is the biggest social and political census that's ever happened in the history of humanity. But we're so far away from achieving them. A few short years away, we're going to be missing those goals. And why is this? This is because of the wishy-washy traditional systems that we have. When we sort of really think about this, the processes for originating green bonds, for issuing debt, for dispersing grants or issuing carbon credits are slow, tedious, intermediated, and result in a whole bunch of PDFs generally. The truth is that this is not going to achieve the next trillion. And then let's talk about the claims that we make. So the European Commission in 2020 said that there's about $30.7 trillion or euros available in private capital for sustainable finance. But at the same time, the European Securities and Markets Authority said that we don't really know how to measure that. We don't know how to apply standards and procedures that are credible in knowing whether we've achieved sustainable capital. So let's see what more is going to be revealed in the upcoming COP28 in a few weeks' time in Dubai. Now, I'm sure that my esteemed colleagues are working on this, and I would love to hear examples of contrary statements of how the traditional systems, the real-world finance systems, are doing things differently. I would posit it's because they have digital technologies and the virtualization of finance. Now, I stand in front of you not only as a speaker, but also as a doer. Over the past decade, I've been leading a team that is building a digital immune system for humanity to sense and respond to sustainability threats and opportunities for impact. We call this the Internet of Impacts. And if you will allow me, I'll give you a couple of examples to make this really very practical. So in Africa, we have been working on access to clean energy for emerging households. Now, usually this is a process that can take years to originate carbon credits. This financing is slow and cumbersome, and a lot of value extraction happens into investors and intermediaries. What we've done is to create digital twins, NFT digital twins, for the rights to the cook stove and carbon credits. And then we flow digital claims through these digital twins and collect real-time data with real-time verification using artificial intelligence to generate digital carbon credits. So this all sounds grand, but what is the difference? Well, today if you buy the rights to one digital twin, it generates $200. That means 2 more cook stoves can be delivered to families who get access to clean energy and renewable ways of cooking. And so it doubles every few months. After the first year, 4 doubling cycles, the second year, 5 doubling cycles, and the third year, 6 doubling cycles, we have 15 doubling cycles, resulting in more than 3,000 cook stoves, starting from 1. Now, this is a speed and a scale that is internet speed and internet scale that cannot be achieved through traditional means. The other example comes from soil, and I'm going to posit that in future, we will have a green digital soil globally. Now, all of the soil on the Earth has a holding capacity of 2,500 gigatons of carbon. That's 3 times what's up in the atmosphere and 4 times the carbon in all life forms on Earth. Through the Earth State platform that we're announcing next week, or I guess we just announced it now, we will be placing digital sensors in all of these fields, collecting real-time data, originating real-time carbon credits that flow capital back to the farmers for regenerative farming. Now, this is happening on a scale and at a speed that is otherwise not possible. So these are great examples, but at the end of the day, this is all about people. In 2020, the UN Task Force for the Digitalization of Finance for the Sustainable Development Goals issued a report which they called People's Money. And they make a very strong case that the future of finance, we have an opportunity to change how it works now. And this is about the trillions of dollars that people have the ability to make choices about how they spend their money, how they earn their money, how they save their money, invest their money, and even how we pay our taxes and hold governments to account for our money. So this is a grand plan, a grand call to action, people's money, making a citizen-centric financial system. But how is this going to happen? It's really all about the interfaces that we have as people with the system. And walking through these halls today, I think we all see the examples of digitalization and virtualization. We will all have an avatar that we speak to that understands us and gives us access to all knowledge. With the incentives that we can provide through digital finance, through the coordination mechanisms, through the trusted data that this generates, we are going to see a completely different way of people having choice over their money and people being able to contribute to the next trillion being green. And so imagine how this is different from the wishy-washy traditional financial system that my opponents are going to argue for. And with that, I would love to hear your response.
Thank you. Round of applause for Shaun. All right, going to Team Tangible. Mel, please take the stage. When you're ready, I will reset the timer. Got your microphone? Okay, your time starts now.
So thank you very much for your opening statements. Really appreciate your point of view. So I and Leah on the team Invest in the Real Economy. So to begin with, I think we all agree, both sides, that there is a moral imperative for us to address the climate crisis and the sustainability challenges that threaten the future of humanity and our planet. So before we start our proposition to invest in the real economy, I actually want to say that I feel it's important to note that both the real and digital economies are not mutually exclusive, but rather interdependent and complementary. And though we may disagree on the focus of the majority of where investment should be directed, we do see the digital economy as an enabler of the real economy, just not the center. So let's break down, first of all, what we're actually debating today. The question is, the next trillion will be green, but how do we get there? The next trillion will be green. So if we look at Bloomberg New Energy Finance data, we actually see on a timescale perspective in 2022, over $1 trillion was already invested in the clean energy transition. So what we're talking about in the next trillion being green is the next 12 months. So we're not looking at a forward-thinking ideal world. We are talking about real economy transformation that needs to happen, and we need to look for a real solution with real impact. So we are undergoing an industrial revolution of our lifetime. Right now, we are functioning on economies that are entirely fueled, or that are predominantly fueled by fossil fuels. ICE cars, our planes, our shipping, the lights that we use, the power that's generated for the most part is fueled by fossil fuels. If we are to hit net zero by 2050, we have to go from an economy that is dependent on 50 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions a year to zero in the next 26 years. And we need to halve those emissions in the next 6 years. And so the time is to act is now. And so we believe that the next $1 trillion that's deployed needs to have 3 characteristics. First of all, we need to look at real investable projects. Given the urgency for action, now we need to look at investable solutions that already exist for us to deploy this capital to have immediate impact on carbon reduction efforts. The second is that these things need to be impact-focused. The next trillion needs to lead to real-life measurable incomes, not virtual assumptions. And the third is that we need to ensure that we incorporate social considerations. This is about people, and we need to ensure that we look at and consider the current economic situation, look at economic growth, and a fair and a just transition and access to clean energy. So, in ASEAN alone, between now and 2030, McKinsey estimates that there is $1 trillion in sustainable opportunities across multiple real economy sectors. Within power, looking at lower carbon electricity and heat generation alternatives, and the upgrade of transmission and distribution to prepare for renewable distribution at scale. In mobility, including road transport, the growth of electric vehicle production and consumption, guided by country-level commitments to phase out ICE vehicles. But we also need additional investment in terms of the EV infrastructure. In buildings, both residential and commercial, including heating and cooling. Not just new building efficiency standards, but also embodied carbon and retrofits of aging buildings. We can also look at agriculture, fossil fuels, industrial processes, and nature restoration. Investment and technology solutions are available for investment right now, and in particular in the power, mobility, and built environment ecosystems. Across the region and around the world, we see tailwinds in these sectors through government incentives and policies which set time-bound near-term targets, increased availability of technology at scale, and investors who are ready and willing to deploy capital and banks to support this transition. So let's now move to our second characteristic, which is impact. When we examine key sectors of the real economy, such as power, industry, automotive, and real estate, the power sector in particular stands out as the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, representing over 30% of global CO2 emissions. So let's take a deep dive into the power sector impact that needs to be achieved. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, although global investment in energy transition technologies reached a record of $1.3 trillion in 2022, yearly investments must more than quadruple to over $5 trillion to stay on the 1.5-degree pathway. Let's remember, this is about the next $1 trillion. It needs to quadruple over $5 trillion to stay on the 1.5-degree pathway. By 2030, cumulative investments must amount to $44 trillion, with transition technologies representing 80% of the total, prioritizing efficiency, electrification, grid expansion, and flexibility. Around $1 trillion of planned annual fossil fuel investment by 2030 needs to be redirected towards transition technologies to keep that 1.5-degree target within reach. Grid infrastructure and expansion alone requires an estimated $21.4 trillion, according to BNEF, to support a net zero trajectory. Closer to home, here in Singapore, power generation accounts for 40% of our carbon emissions in this country. Renewable energy currently accounts for 1% of the energy mix. By 2030, 28% of the energy supply is expected to come from solar power, and with a national hydrogen strategy in place, hydrogen could support more than 50% of Singapore's power needs by 2050 alone. We see similar commitments to renewable energy adoption in Thailand and Vietnam, which require wide-scale investment and expansion, leading to impact. This is just the power sector. When we start thinking about each of the sectors, mobility, built environment, agriculture, fossil fuels, and industrials, we're actually starting to see the convergence of an ecosystem where policy, technology, and investment opportunity are starting to meet. So the wishy-washiness is getting to be less wishy-washy. And what we're actually seeing is that this is going to create an enabling environment for investments to support scale and bring down the cost of widespread implementation. It's not yet moving fast enough, but it is moving. And as we focus on building the commerciality and the scalability of investment opportunities through focusing on the transition of the real economy, we can start to direct increasing flows at greater scales. We need to catalyze investment and build the momentum. Real businesses need to transform their business models. The last characteristic I want to talk about is the incorporation of social considerations. We cannot ignore the imperative that the transition to net zero needs to be a just one. We need to ensure that we incorporate concepts of continued economic growth, access to affordable and clean energy when we look at where we invest our dollars. Jobs and livelihoods need to be considered. We need to transform our communities and our companies, and this can only be done when we put the real economy and people at the center of our investments. We have a moral imperative to address the climate change crisis and the sustainability challenges that threaten the future of humanity and our planet. The next $1 trillion for green must be invested in the real economy.
Woo! Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. All right, it's not wishy-washy, it's getting real. Okay, Max, your turn in the spotlight. Get yourself ready, centered, ready to come back with your arguments. And Max, I should say, is a world-renowned debater, so we're expecting great fireworks. Are you ready? Go.
Thank you so much, Darian. Thank you so much to our amazing counterparties, my amazing teammates. Max, representing the green and virtual side. So I want to take a moment and first start with a very core consideration. When we argue for the digital and the virtual, we're not arguing that we're living in imaginary. We are actually arguing that we need to use the digital tools to actually ensure the next $1 trillion go to the right place. So to build off an argument that my teammate said in the beginning, Shaun said, today there is a deep amount of skepticism about where the money actually is going. This is a fundamental limitation holding back the entire climate transition, is that people don't have the confidence that the actual money is being spent the right way. We believe, as Team Virtual and Green, that we need to put better data guardrails on every single dollar and cent of climate transition finance. And that is only possible if we use the new age technologies we live in. We're not living in the 1950s. We now have the ability to measure every single unit of electricity, every single footprint of a human being, every single movement of both physical and organic matter on the planet. We have the ability to look at our planet at a 360 globe on a daily basis. This technology is just starting to become the core deciding metric for where asset allocation goes. But we believe, through digital twin technology, that it is totally possible. It's 110% possible for actually to model out the entirety of this ecology. So that's my first point, that we need to use the virtual and the green technologies to ensure the direction and destination of green finance. The second piece is user engagement. We are not going to get to the green transition without bringing all of you guys with us. And if we think about it, fundamentally, we are going through a societal transformation where the ability for individuals to choose how they live their lives is of the utmost importance actually for managing the transition. Companies will not change unless their customers vote with their feet. And we believe that there are powerful incentive tools to change the way that people live, using the tools of the digital world to change actions in the physical world. So we are not divorced from the physical reality. Instead, what we're arguing is that we can actually change the way that the economy is shaped physically. Now, I live of a generation that grew up playing video games. And for those of you guys in the audience who dismissed video games as a fantasy, video games are actually one of the largest growing economies in the entire world. What we see is the ability to start changing the way that people consume, from buying luxury items made in the real world to owning assets in the virtual world that give people higher levels of satisfaction, experience, and also equality. Now, many of you guys live, as I do, in the developed world. We take for granted the fact that we have beautiful food, beautiful furniture, beautiful transportation as a daily consideration. The rest of the world cannot afford to live with that same degree of luxury that we have because there's not enough iron, not enough oil, not enough bricks to support their lifestyle. How will we see the next 2 or 3 billion people come out of the emerging markets into a satisfaction of life that we take for granted today? We need to deliver them experiences that satisfy them, but also do not have an irremovable footprint on our planet. That is only achievable through the virtual experience. Some of you guys have seen demos of where the metaverse is going. I have to tell you that the blocky kind of, sort of Roblox things that we're seeing right now are just the toy examples of the higher than real life fidelity which is the metaverse experience is going to deliver. And we believe firmly that we can actually allow many, many more people to enjoy a higher quality of life in both ownership, work, and also play in the virtual economy than we can in the physical one. So this is a point number 2, that we can actually incentivize and create experiences that give equality to the people who are coming up without sacrificing their ability to have high quality life experiences while meeting the climate transition. Meanwhile, transportation of material goods and production of material goods collectively account for 32% of global emissions. So what is the climate footprint of our ability to shift that consumption to the virtual realm? We can actually shave off 1/3 of total emissions today. That, I think, is a powerful argument for why the next trillion is going to be green through the virtual economy. And the third and final point I would make is that we're living through a transformation of finance. The ability for actually to allocate capital itself is changing because where's the money coming from and where is it going? These questions are starting to come into focus. If you look around the FinTech Week today, we see every single large financial institution starting to embrace the digital transformation that they've been talking about for the last 20 years. And the reason for that is that they feel that their role in society might be disintermediated in the next 2 to 3 years if they're not careful. If you look at the digital asset revolution, the fact that the entire digital asset sector today is a multi-trillion-dollar sector, despite some of the best efforts of both traditional incumbent players and regulators to actually curtail its growth, says there is vitality and value to this economy. As a practitioner of both the Web3 space and sustainability, I firmly believe that the new types of societal organization and new types of infrastructure that are being created today are critical for the climate change transition. We have the ability to assign a unique digital identity to every single person on the planet. We can also assign a unique digital identity to every single corporate entity on the planet and every single piece of natural resource. That is not possible today with pen and paper. Once we have that address system built, the second thing we can do is start accounting for what is being used for and who is actually paying the bills. If you are a company that is actively destroying the materiality of which you inhabit, then we are going to negatively credit planetary balance to your digital ID. And we will make that publicly available so that you cannot hide behind fancy PR statements and nice marketing. You have to live with the consequences of the actual real-life actions. Simultaneously, if you are an individual or country or government that is actually proactively saving the environment that you are in stewardship of, you also should be materially rewarded. And there are now tools that exactly deliver, right, through tools like what Shaun's building, what we're building, to actually give economic value to the end recipient without having to worry that it's going to disappear 80, 90% along the intermediaries. That is never before possible. It is possible today through the virtual and green economy, and it's possible through the things we're doing. We think that in order to change the entire transition, we need 3 things. We need to change the way that people behave through incentives. We need to change the way that accountability is measured through data. And we need to change the way that capital is allocated through transparency. With these as my 3 core arguments, I would argue that the next trillion will definitely be green, but also will come from the digital sector. Thank you.
Woo, thank you, Max. Let me come out here. Okay, nice 3 points. Now we have one more speaker, Leah, to bring up the real economy side, and then it's your turn. So remember, I want you to come up with points of intervention if you have a superior fact that you would like to add, or if you'd like to contradict something that one of the speakers said, that's what we want to hear from you. Okay, Leah, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Darian.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Time starts now.
All right. Hi, everyone. I want to re-echo what my teammate Mel said about all the numbers and the solutions, and also take it a step further and really look at why do we need to box in virtual assets? Why is it such a risk? And why do we need to keep the focus so strong on the real economy. And I have some breaking news to start with, which is that green and virtual does not exist, just like most carbon offsets don't exist when you get to the source of them. Virtual is not green, it is brown and it's dirty. And it is a huge threat to our climate crisis. So it's becoming its own asset class. We have a very small portion of virtual that's actually trying to work on the solution. And it's becoming a means in an end in of itself, not a means to an end. So actually labeling it as green is a greenwashing technique. Greenwashing by definition is backed up by evidence. And there's harm in doing this approach because you're taking scarce finance, scarce attention, and scarce time away from solutions that will deliver results. And we know that they will deliver results. All right, so I want to start with a little story. Imagine you're in London 160 years ago, coal smoke everywhere. There was an innovation in the locomotive engine, which was turning to steam engine much more efficient. Everyone was very excited. But this British economist called William Jevons, he was just 29 years old in 1865, said that actually this is going to lower the cost and cause us to exploit coal much faster. So this became known in his book called The Coal Question as Jevons paradox. And the paradox is that innovations that we think will deliver environmental benefits or other resource efficiency gains, in fact, just lead us to exploit resources faster and further. And that's exactly what our analogy is. AI is a train. We're looking at an innovation that is a huge threat to our climate system. So I want to start with the current situation of how much energy and how much emissions are coming from virtual assets, and then go into some of the elephants in the room. Take some virtual blood. Throw you a bone. There you go. Okay. So current situation. AI is so energy intensive that it makes the crazy rich Asians look really frugal. It's, as of August 2022, last year, right, this is before the advent of ChatGPT and everyone being able to do a lot more AI on their phone. We looked at total global electricity usage for crypto assets at around 200 billion kilowatt hours per year. So for those of us aren't deep in the energy real economy space, that is more than Argentina and more than Australia and more than many other countries, electricity usage. And it is also equal to all the conventional data centers in the world, just from virtual assets 1 year ago. So when we talk about moving it to the cloud and not having physical world impact, actually, that's a myth. It doesn't exist today. That share is also reflected in carbon dioxide emissions. So now I want to get to the elephant in the room, which is the fact that AI and virtual assets are undermining countries' climate commitments. I'm going to talk about grids, cost, and consumers, because we care about people too. So undermining NDCs. The US government, I'm going to read a quote that they published last year. And we know the US is very conservative when it comes to climate change these days. So this is the quote, "The growth of energy-intensive crypto asset technologies, when not directly using clean electricity, could hinder the ability of the United States to achieve its contributions under the Paris Agreement and the US's efforts to avoid the most severe impacts of climate change." US government paper last year. And just to remind you, NDCs are going to get us to a 3-degree world, and now crypto and virtual assets are going to put that in jeopardy. And this caveat around clean energy, well, it's a zero-sum game. We already have limited supply. So just to say that we're going to build new crypto assets with clean energy is zero-sum. You're taking clean energy from where we already have fossil fuel generation. Second point, reliability of the electricity grid. We have a very good local example in Singapore, where Singapore banned data centers in 2019 because of the energy risks of data centers. And that was a ban for 3 years. So that just illustrates when you have very energy-intensive industries, like this distributed ledger and all of these verification systems, it's going to undermine the energy security. Second point, cost of electricity to consumers. I'm not going to go into economics 101, but supply and demand, when you have a big demand and you have limited supply of energy, that drives up the price of energy. So consumers like you and me are going to bear the consequences of very, very energy-intensive virtual conversions. Last thing, communities. So we're all about the people, right? Well, many people are excluded from the benefits. We've had panelists today talking about SMEs and energy access challenges in Nigeria. So that whole demographic is excluded from many of it. But very importantly is that this mining concept of where the actual analytics take place, it's like mining as we know it in the traditional way, turned into energy for the virtual world. So that mining produces noise and water consumption, electronic waste from all that equipment turnover, and air pollution from on-site fossil fuels. And then to put salt in the wound, we're looking at those sites often located in disadvantaged communities that don't have the governance, don't have the social protections to protect them from those harms. So in conclusion, I have used the Singapore government and the US as examples of how they're thinking about understanding the data impact, through data, the impacts of this virtual asset world. And they both have the ability, they're countries with the ability and the institutions to understand, to put in safeguards, to have policy measures. What about all the emerging economies in other countries in the world? We're going to look at impacts and effects that cannot be mitigated. So I truly believe Shaun and Max have the very best intentions when it comes to, and all the people working on virtual and ESG, but based on this, the ESG and virtual just does not exist. We're at a Jevons paradox moment. We think we've got an amazing innovation that's going to deliver some miraculous solutions. We need to stick to what is tried and true. And I want to return to this maternity ward type analogy of digital twins. Do you know how much energy digital twinning is? It's creating real models based on real worlds. I mean, it's hugely energy intensive. So we're creating this whole new asset class with real world impacts. And it's misleading to say that it doesn't have an impact. And we're seeing how it's leading to climate change undermine in certain countries. We're on the cusp of runaway energy demand as a result of this innovation, and it's a top energy and climate risk today. Are we prepared for it? Absolutely not. We're not prepared at all. And so I want us to just think about all of these impacts that are happening on the virtual world and the way a lot of this stuff is not talked about in the halls. And what does it mean to actually be addressing climate change? In fact, it's really not that hard. We know exactly where emissions are coming from. It's fossil fuel, it's land-based deforestation and others. So what about just stop funding it and stop using it and putting a price on carbon and using that to change the cost-benefit analysis of all of the investments that Mel outlined that are needed today. So so that's why we need to put the focus on the real economy. And if we look at that ticker over there, we have 5 years. So I know if I'm thinking about the future of this world and halving emissions in 2030, that there's tried and true solutions. We have very simple policy changes that are already happening. And we stick to what we know without creating perverse incentives and potentially leading to runaway energy demand. Thank you.
Woo! Thank you, Leah.
That's
You can take that. You may keep that. All right, you've heard the for and against, the digital and the real. Now is your turn to get involved. Who has a point of clarification or additional comment to build on either argument? I think we have a roving mic. Put your hands up if you would like to add some points. Come on. Was that a wave or a question? Okay, here we go. First brave participant.
Yeah. Okay, no one is taking, so I'll take it. So we have a green virtual, we have a real economy tangible, so I can have a audience and consumer as a third one. So yeah, looking at a green and virtual, as well as this, I have a few comments, or I'll say arguments. first on a green virtual, 3 points. One is that, hey, today we have 8,000 cryptocurrencies. Does really world needs that many? Yeah, so there is a lot of wastage. Second, I come from data center industry, so I know how much energy is being consumed. And that's probably not as healthy, so needs to be more efficient on that part. And obviously, third is we do need virtual digital economy to help the real economy. But the argument on real economy side has been that, hey, you need to use a less energy. No, you need to produce a green energy. To have the development for the humanity, the most important measure is how much energy is being consumed. If you see, the living standard is very clearly tied to energy consumption. So obviously we need more and more energy to pull many people out of poverty, improve the living standard. So we need to produce more steel, bricks, and cement, as well as energy, but that all needs to be green. And this is where I think the real economy needs to work on producing more of this in a more green way, supported by these guys. So that's what.
Okay, thank you. That felt like a bet either way, but a very good intervention. Who else would like to make a comment? Lady in the front. The waiver.
Hello, hi, thank you. A question to the real economy. We've seen that about 3/4 of the credits that have been produced have been known junk. There's been many scandals around governance, many project developers pulling out because of many articles that are actually looking at improper measurements. So how do we fix some of those problems in the future forward in a real economy context? And where do you see the signs of hope, right? I think the real economy has brought us here. How do we get out of the challenges that we've seen until now that the real economy has brought us here to actually fix those in the environment of the real and the tangible?
Okay, now this was a no questions section. This was the points of intervention section. So I'll leave it up to Team Tangible. Would you like to respond, or you can respond in your closing comments?
Okay, just very briefly, I think. So fixing transparency in the real economy, and your question is specifically around carbon credits. We're actually seeing a shift of what net zero means. So the science-based targets is saying you must reduce. So all these shortcuts that we keep trying to take are not delivering results. So science-based target says you must reduce 90% before you can offset if you want to achieve net zero rather than carbon neutral. The EU is now rolling out in 2026, it will not be possible to call a product climate neutral if there's offsetting as well. So the carbon credits has a lot of methodological challenges around avoidance. I actually think this is also a good question to our colleagues on the other side. They've held up carbon credits backed by very energy-intensive crypto sources as a solution. I think we question that virtual kind of exchange. We want to focus on investments directly within the value chain.
Fair's fair. Virtual team, would you like to also respond to the question?
Definitely. So I want to thank Leah for giving us a chance to illustrate this point. I think it is a common piece of understanding for those who are not so technology savvy. So, what Leah mentioned was really this idea of proof of work for Bitcoin mining. And to the gentleman's point, every other major digital asset does not use proof of work anymore. In fact, Ethereum transitioned from proof of work to proof of stake, shaving 99.8% off of its energy footprint in a single day. Show me a real-world transition that has the ability to shave 99.8% of your total energy profile in a single day and continue operating a multi-billion-dollar economy. There are no living examples. Second piece is there is a conflux between what is being used as the tools of the virtual economy and the relatively large amounts of different tokens and so on. Our point is actually not arguing for the value of cryptocurrency at all. Our point is actually that the infrastructure that has actually allowed the digital assets to be created in the first place are some of the best tools we have available to ensure that the money we want to spend in green transition arrives at the destination. So this is the separating of the how and the what. I think I want to make that point of clarification. The third point is actually about the metaverse, right, and the use of the digital communication tools and how that might actually lead to more emissions. It is an empirical fact that during COVID, where we were no longer allowed to travel, we actually lost 6% of global emissions during that period because people transitioned their ability to do business and connect actually to living online. So Zoom, even though it uses energy, as the data center gentleman here suggested, is a far more uses far less energy than actually flying on airplanes. So these are kind of empirical rebuttals against some of the points made by our opponents. Thank you.
No. We still get another 3 minutes.
We would like to point out that they used the question to rebut us for their 3 minutes and don't actually answer the question.
I will give you a very good point of clarification. We'll come to our final 3 minutes. Any other points of clarification from the audience? Okay. Gentleman in the front.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, so I'm from Thailand, so I'm in support of the real economy side. And this is actually towards Shaun's point. So Shaun earlier mentioned a little bit on his soil measurement tool to actually enable regenerative agriculture practices, right? So where I'm from, in Thailand, 30% of the workplace workforce, it's actually in agriculture, and a large portion of it is in farming. But agriculture actually just contributes about 8% of the country's GDP. That means a significant amount of the farmers are actually well below poverty line. So, and this is a question statement, so you don't have to answer this. Do you think that for the farmers to start having better sustainable practices, regenerative practices, will it be through a soil measurement tool that promotes regenerative practices, or will it be in partnership with the real economy players, their buyers, that helps them improve their livelihoods?
Okay, 1 minute answer from either team. Team Virtual.
Climate finance provides additionality. So there are billions of dollars that are being mobilized towards addressing the climate crisis. And farmers in Thailand should share in that. They should share in it for their practices. They should share in it in order to be incentivized to change their practices, and should be part of the global impact economy that we can create through digital financing and through digital verification.
Team Tangible.
Team Tangible, woohoo. So we've just done a study exactly on this, and the up the value chain options for decarbonizing, farmers need the money. The money is not going to these techniques, which are real world techniques, changing rice crop, adding in infrastructure for preventing food losses, upgrading manufacturing processes, not to have fossil fuel emissions. So the scale of the investment we're looking at, the next trillion must be green, because we know the money is needed, we know where it's needed.
Okay, that comes to the end of the intervention part. We're going to have a final 3-minute summary from each team, and then I'm going out to you, the audience, to make some noise for the team that you thought made the best arguments. Okay, Team Virtual. I'm not sure if our timer is going to reset to 3 minutes, will it? Okay, I'm getting a nod. We have the technology, which is handy for this panel. Your time starts now.
Thank you. So I want to phrase this in the following way. We are very much proactively in support of actually spending money on the real economy. However, the rails, the measurements, and the evaluation of how that money has to be spent must come from the digital technology side. Otherwise, we run the risk of actually spending these trillions of dollars into places that there's no accountability, no visibility, and no impact. So we would actually argue that over the next few years, as we see the world economy proactively decide to invest in the climate change transition, that they will use the tools of the digital and virtual world to make sure that money goes in. which means that all of the money going in, or most of it, any credible amounts of it, are going to be passing through our side of the table. Point number one. Point number two. There is a misunderstanding by many people that the digital tools must be more energy intensive than the real world counterparts. In fact, if we look at the way that processes and operations are improved, digitalization has been the biggest driver for decarbonization of traditional industry in the world. From the fact that we can automate where lights are used, to the fact that we can actually have much more precision manufacturing, the fact that we can actually have improvements in the speed, scale, and delivery of transportation services, the digitalization of traditional industries is probably one of the only ways we can actually accomplish this climate transition needs. Last and final point is about governance. All of us have to have a say in the future. We can no longer rely on single points of decision-making for ensuring that the community interest is well protected. And the virtual and digital world, through Shaun's excellent example of people's money, allows us to have a voice of how our money is spent, giving us collective participation, collective governance, and collective visibility over the next $1 trillion. So with these as our concluding remarks, we thank you for your time, participation, and support.
Woo! Thank you, Max. Okay, Team Tangible.
Do we?
You come up.
No, we're going to sit here and take it from the table. Oh, you're going to vote to it. Okay. Democratic sharing.
Teamwork to the end. Okay, your time starts now.
So I would love to agree that this little instance where these case studies show impact, but if you look at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they did a big scientific report last year, and there's an entire chapter on digitalization. And the conclusion of that chapter is that digitalization has system rebound effects, just like that train, right? So the locomotive example. When you look system-wide, that there is not evidence that digitalization leads to reduced emissions. Actually, the IPCC is saying that in most circumstances, you're seeing a system rebound where net emissions. That's why we've been digitalizing. We're still going up with emissions every year. Last point I want to say, is that the digital assets, the key, we're not saying don't do virtual. We're saying it's not green, okay? We need to decouple the concept that virtual is green. It's not. It is energy intensive. Just because you have a couple instances of where it's energy efficient, we have to look at it as a whole, right? Every time we think about system thinking too small, we see the consequences play out.
So Max, in his presentation, said that there were 3 points that he wanted to talk about. How he changed the way people behave, how he changed the way accountability is seen, and how he changed the way we incentivize green. We change the way people behave by providing them with the opportunity to change how they live, work, and experience the real world. We change the way accountability is seen through data. Digital helps us talk about how we classify and how we check and balance, but not how we actually invest. And if we change the way we incentivize green, we have a real-world situation in Thailand where the solution to the farmer is not a digital solution. It is literally providing them with the cash and access to the solutions to allow them to be able to do their work. So Max actually agrees with us. The next $1 trillion will be green with digital help as an enabler, but it has to be in the real economy.
Woo! Okay, well, I think that was an excellent debate from either side. Now it's time for you guys to judge. So the boys spoke first, so we're going to go the girls' side first. I'm going to measure it by how loud the response from all of you sitting here, all of you in the back stalls, the cheap seats out in the stands, how loud you yell and shout and cheer for the team that you think argued their case the best. All right. Those who want to vote for Team Tangible and Girls, give it up now! Woo! That's pretty impressive. That's pretty lively for an audience on a Friday afternoon. For those who want to vote for Team Virtual and the boys, give it up now. Ooh, that's tough. That's tough, but I think the sadly virtual prize is going to Team Tangible. Woo! Well done, well argued to both sides. Thank you very much for being part of the great debate, and thank you for being at the Singapore FinTech Festival. I think that is actually the conclusion on this stage. Oh, look, we have prizes. Thank you, thank you. Okay, I'm going to give it. Team Tangible, you actually get a tangible reward. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Can I ask you to remain on stage?
Green and virtual fair.
I have a little toast next, apparently.
Oh, and sustainable beer.
And there's more beer for everyone as well, that side.
You guys want to cheers each other?
Right, virtual.
Congratulations. Big round of applause for our speakers and our moderator.